Clearly, tax is much more of a matter of public interest and controversial than it was 15 years ago. There was a long time when it was just a backroom activity that people were bored with and not interested in for whatever reason. Clearly, the fact that's changed, the financial crisis, all the outcome of that, has created a lot of debate and controversy. So it's difficult to get consensus on where we go now. But I think one thing there is a strong emerging consensus on is how policy should be made, that it should be made in a more open way, that the governments and others who propose policy changes should be clearer about the purposes for which they're putting forward different changes.
The system of tax reliefs we have, does that fit in with, our other strategic aims? And what might be a way we think about asking those questions and then going about answering them too?
There are some efforts made to identify why a tax policy, particularly in the case of a tax incentive, needs to be there. And that will be reviewed by the Office of Budget Responsibility and others. But I think more could be done to identify a longer term path and where particular policies fit within that overall direction of travel.
Maybe it's better to start a debate which says, in the UK tax system, what do we want to encourage? What do we want to pay for? And how do we go about that? We can then start with clear objectives in mind and build up from there, rather than worrying about the precise balance in the system as it stands now.
If you want a fair and equal society, you really need to be able to pay for that. At the moment, we're in the middle of a social care crisis. That crisis, the crisis within the NHS, obviously that all comes from taxation of various different sorts. And because our taxation system isn't simple, it's not clear where that money's coming from, who's going to pay for it. And in order to look after the most vulnerable people in society, there has to be some sort of taxation.
There's a lot of changes occurring in the UK, demographic, Brexit, new ways of working. All these things need to feed into the tax system. Politicians, legislators, academics, people in industry, workers, representative groups, all need to be thinking, what are we expecting of our tax system? How can it deliver what we want?
One of the things we notice in this area is there's kind of a lack of transparency and discussion about the aims of some of these policies. So take an example with a comparison with the social security system, for example. Most people can probably tell you, maybe not most people, the aims of what specific types of spending are meant to do, who they go to, why they've been established, and there's a huge amount of debate around there. When you look at the system of tax reliefs, however, I think there's much less discussion about why have we decided to spend this tax relief or what are the outcomes. So I think some element of transparency is probably our first principle we'd aim for.
So while it would be tempting to almost start the tax system again, to grab the opportunity to redesign the tax system for future use, the reality is, at best, we're going to have to make do with incremental changes to what we've got to at least move us consistently in the right direction of travel.
We move away from the kind of rabbit from a hat approach where everything is a complete surprise sprung by the Chancellor on budget day. And in fairness to the Chancellor, the press and the commentators assume that that's going to happen and dismiss it as a dull budget if it hasn't happened. We want to move away from that to something which is more measured and balanced and where people have a chance to debate.